Welcome back to 20 Minutes of Clarity, your go to podcast for financial information so you can make better informed financial decisions. I'm your host, Jason Noble, and with me today is Andy, the man merchant. As we dive into another topic today, as we always do, we're going to be answering the question, how do I turn my intentions into results? I mean, if you look at the podcast that we've already done this year, it was really around how do you set goals and things of that nature. Okay, now it's about results.
Hmm.
We're in a results oriented world. It's not what you intend to do, it's what you actually did. So we're going to spend the time addressing that. If you missed last week's podcast and you want to check it out, go to clearpicturefinancial.com so you can look at that podcast along with our white paper and anything else that's there. You can always like, subscribe, and follow as well. Andy, it's always good seeing you, my friend. And I'm excited about this topic because you provide excellent results with your intentions. It's something I've always appreciated about our relationship and the work that you do. You've turned me on to so many different things, but there was always around what are the results going to be, never just having me do something just to do it. Right? What are the top three things that you want to make sure we talk about today with regards to how do we turn these intentions into actionable results?
Yeah, really rounding up the series of setting that good foundation for the first year and taking actionable steps. It's the best way to do it. Three things we're going to talk about is how you can take those big goals, those overwhelming data points that you've received, either intentionally or goals that you've set, and put them into actionable steps to do it. We're going to talk to you about ways that we do it for our clients, and hoping that helps you within your game plan. The second thing is we're going to talk to you about how we go about setting realistic deadlines. And as you heard last podcast with Jason, talking about milestones and how do you celebrate those. So we're going to talk to you about some strategies and some art that goes into how you to do that to win. And then finally, what are you doing? We're going to talk about ways and ideas and answer the question around what are you doing to stay accountable? Because we live in a dynamic world. We know that there's going to be things that are going to come up, and how do we overcome those setbacks? So those are the big three things, Jason, that I think are the best topics to talk about, and I think it's really going to set people up to round out this setting that foundation for 25.
There it is. And like we'll jump right into break those big goals into smaller actionable steps. An example of this is instead of saying I want to save $20,000 for a down payment, aim for I will save $1,700 per month for the next 12 months. It's taking that big, hairy, audacious number into smaller, actionable numbers. This is a quick example of this. But why do you believe this is the number one thing we should address, and why does this matter? Is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, I mean, and the goal with clients, and we do this within the Clear Picture Wealth program, is everybody's going to have ways to be better, right? The five categories that we focus on in the areas that people can control, which is the why we start this, is if you understand kind of the goals or the opportunity or the ways to improve, then you've got to set actionable steps in order to like move in a certain direction. Otherwise, what is the result? Right? We came from a result world. If I just say I want to save money for a house, that's when we're making a statement. I want to save $20,000 by June 30th so I can buy a home, the benefit by the end of the year. Now that's a big goal that now has an actionable timeline. And it's so much easier for everybody to stay accountable there. So it's really important to do it. And like I said, we focus heavily, and this is what I tell all of our listeners and our viewers and our clients to really think through. Simplify your wealth into the five main categories when you're doing things out there. It's either you want to be more optimal when it comes to your cash flow, because that drives a lot of decisions. You want to be more intentional or more aware of how your assets are located and the liquidity of that. How do you want that to look from now to the end of the year? Can it improve? Maybe you've changed your retirement outlook or your business transition plan. What does that look? If you haven't identified the goal of what retirement even looks like, it doesn't have to be right, but if you don't identify it, you have nothing to track. And then the last two things that we ask our clients to always think through is what are you doing to protect your wealth from lost wealth from taxes or loss of life or anything else? Disruption of your plan needs to be protected. Is this the year that you want to be more intentional in there? And why do you want to be more intentional there? And then the final one is what does that legacy plan look like? If you work your butt off on the top 4 categories and you get everything right, you're going to transfer money, whether or not it goes to your family, goes to your favorite charity, or you just bounce that final check on the last day of your life. Whatever that goal is, if you don't write it down, at least take that big goal, and then we got to start driving it down into those 5 categories to understand how do we actually drive a realistic game plan into achieving those.
Yeah, it's that roadmap, right, Andy,
Yep.
that really identifies the total goals and it breaks it down into those main categories. And then we assign numbers to them and prioritization, but then also tracking them on an ongoing basis to see how they're progressing. And I love to celebrate those wins, right? The saying that I think of for this topic is the biggest doors rely on the smallest hinges. If we focus on the smaller things, the bigger things will come into place, right? And celebrating that progress and maintaining that motivation and building that momentum towards a larger goal is what I really see from when we're doing our annual review meetings and showing them how the impact of the work that was done over the last year, how that's moving in the right direction and continuing along their journey, right? And it's going into the second thing that you touched on, which is setting those realistic deadlines and milestones.
Yeah.
You
That's
know,
hard.
why does that matter?
Yeah, I mean, hey, if I want to say I want to be more cash flow efficient and I'm going to save more into my retirement plan, if you don't set a date on when you're going to start that and then how you're going to monitor that, then you didn't do it. I mean, I once heard a saying back been years ago that if you don't write it down, you didn't do it, right? So if you need to write down your deadline. You have to identify the deadline and then stay accountable. And don't do it too much. A lot of times people get really ambitious and say, we're going to knock this stuff out in the first 1 or 2 months, right? Jason, when we work with our clients, and part of our goal is to set accountability and deadlines to follow up on things, it's easy for us to say, let's go knock all this out in 2 or 3 weeks because we do this every day. It's easy for us. We're efficient. We understand that people have lives. And so we do try to spread some of these things out, whether it's I'm going to meet with um, my attorney and get that will done that I've been talking about for the last 3 or 4 years to finally say, we're going to do it by June. I'm going to do this by, right? And it's so important to do that so that you have the measurables and then your accountability, which we'll talk into the next phase, that accountability partner can hold you accountable. But to your point is if you achieve that goal, because sometimes these are short-term goals. Sometimes just, man, I'm going to cut out coffee for a day and I'm going to go out and put that extra money into my cash management account because I need to build liquidity. 3 months later, you've built up an extra name the dollar amount. Like, celebrate that. Maybe go have a coffee, but you have to reward yourself. Otherwise, it's just going to feel like work.
I want to share an extreme example of this topic. this this conversation I'm about to share happened around 6 years ago. A couple comes in and they're talking like they have a lot of debt. And I'm like, are you talking about mortgage? They're like, no, credit card, loans. I mean, we're not even talking about the mortgage yet. Yes, we have a mortgage, we have car loans, but we have other types of debt. And I was like, all right, let's just go through. And so I start writing down the credit card and how much they have, what the rate what they were paying was, what their minimum monthly payment was, and I started extrapolating that debt. I got done um, the first page, and I'm like, okay, we got some work to do, but this is something that we could achieve. And then the wife says, "Are you ready for mine now?" I had to flip over the page and provide everything. And to her credit, it was only half the page. It wasn't a full page. And then I need to look at, okay, we're gonna have to break this down into bite-sized chunks, but then also make sure that we have realistic deadlines and milestones along the way. So I looked at two debt management systems. I looked at Debt Snowball and Debt Avalanche. We talked about it in another podcast. Go check that out. It's on our website. But through them and their and like what we needed to provide flexibility within the plan for life happening, we decided to do the Debt Snowball approach. And in there, and it gave us like a year by year breakdown of what it would be. It was through this amazing program that I built out with our director of financial planning so we could show them these milestones. And it was like every December we had like a milestone and a goal to achieve, and we broke that into semi-annual. So every 6 months, right? And they could see visually how they were progressing. And at first, with the debt snowball approach, they got some early wins, which was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
They created the momentum. They were supposed to pay off their debt in a total of 5 years. They were able to do it. I'm sorry, 4 years. They were able to do it in 3 years. They paid it off a year early because extra money came into the plan, and we were able to put that towards the debt snowball approach. What I'm getting at is they went from having this mountain of debt, and I call it a mountain. This is the most debt I've ever seen outside of a mortgage. But excluding their mortgage, they had $235,000 of debt.
Hmm.
And they were able to do that in 3 years because we had a plan in place. And I incorporated two things that we discussed today. I took a big bucket and I broke it down to actionable, smaller steps. But then we also created milestones. Every 6 months, we had those meetings to see how they were progressing. And, you know, I've just never seen progress done in a linear fashion.
Yeah.
It's just never a straight line.
Yep.
There's always setbacks, there's always things that come into play that we need to adjust and account for. But when I was building out their cash flow optimization, I've already accounted for expenses coming up that weren't even addressed yet. I didn't know what those will be, but I put that variable in. And when that didn't happen, they put that towards long-term investing. And when it did happen, they weren't going deeper into debt to then be able to pay that off later. It didn't hurt them. We were able to incorporate with it. So I
Mm-hmm.
got to give this couple a lot of credit, and I don't ever say their names because I want to protect the innocent. But they're debt free now. They don't even have a mortgage. They have no debt whatsoever, and their financial freedom. They're still moving in that direction because that was a big setback, and they were in their early 50s, right? So they got some time on their side. But what I'm getting at is they could have been a victim to this. They could have had that mentality of scarcity that we discussed in a prior podcast. No, this is the problem that we put ourselves in. We are now ready to address this, and they hired me as a financial professional to help them navigate not just that one aspect, but many other aspects. But that was a big one early on. I like to share extreme examples
Yeah.
because I don't like to be dramatic or anything,
Hey, get your
but
attention.
it's to show you may be right now in a similar situation. Maybe you don't have $235,000 of credit card debt and loans, but maybe you have something else that's hanging over you. Take action on it. I love what Andy said. Write it down, put some measurables on it, and get to work. That's a great transition to stay accountable and overcome those setbacks. Andy, why does this matter?
I mean, everybody has accountability partners if you're trying to achieve something. Otherwise, you're just kind of floating through, life and hope, right? It turns into hope and not goals driven results, right? And today's topic is how do we take our good intentions and turn them into results? And this is the component that is as we started with good goals and simplifying and having some timelines to achieve those things that are celebrated, but who's going to hold you accountable? You know, um, I joke all the time with my clients, and when we sit down and we talk at review, say, I just want you to remember that I'm here to help you grow your nest egg. That's part of our job. But the other side is my job is to keep us all accountable, right? And I'm not just going to hold myself accountable because I will. But if I've asked you to get that will and trust done, and you haven't done it by a certain date, I can promise you, you're going to hear from the team on a regular basis because we have an accountability requirement. If you're in that boat and you work with us, you'll find that you'll move to that path faster. I mean, let's use many of you may be out there doing the New Year's resolution workout plan, right? It's the early of the year. We all go to the gym. You work with that accountability, that personal trainer who's holding you accountable. Would you be as productive towards that goal that you have if it wasn't for that person kind of setting those expectations for you? Right. So it's so important that you have an accountability partner. If it's not an outside person, like this is something that's in house. I know, Jason, you talk about how you and Rachel have much more of an intentional kind of more frequent meeting where than what I do with my wife and Ange. But at the end of the day, it's like you still have accountability to where it's a feedback. So accountability, and I'm going to say it one more time: accountability is probably the most important steps into making your intentions actual results.
I'm going to talk about the ugly part of this is when those setbacks occur,
Yeah.
right? It's all not just roses and sunshine on this stuff. Our listeners know that very well. Maybe our younger listeners don't. So here's a cold hard truth, right? When that setback does occur, take a step back and analyze what went wrong. Adjust your plan and get back on track without dwelling on that mistake. Right? Scent of a Woman is a phenomenal movie. It's one of my favorite movies. And in that movie, he asks this woman to dance, and the tango, and she goes, "Well, I don't know how to dance the tango." He goes, "That's the beautiful thing about it. When you get tangled up, you just tango on." Right? So I'm stealing a line from the great Al Pacino in Sense of a Woman. If you haven't checked that movie out, here's a strong recommendation to go do that. Right? But, and I think of that line from time to time when I'm working with my clients and they have a setback. I think about that line that's the beautiful thing about the tango. When you get tangled up, you just tango on. I think about that when I have a step back in my own personal financial goals, right? I think about that when my 10-year-old daughter comes to me with a problem that she's facing at school, whether it be a teacher or another student, whatever the case may be. One, I love that she comes to me or her mom, right? We're her accountability partner. We help her guide, right? But she has to make the decision. She has to go through it. And when she makes a mistake, I don't dwell on the mistake that she makes because when I get tangled up, we just tangle on,
I love it.
right?
It's so good.
But it's that encouragement also that needs to take place, right? It's each setback is a learning opportunity and not a failure. It comes back to that mindset. When you have a mindset of growth, when you have that mindset of abundance, you're able to see, okay, this is a learning experience. This is not a failure, right? Now, if your mindset happens to be scarcity, think about your setbacks. And did you think, and if you don't know what your mindset is, right? Think about what did I just say? Did you think it was a failure or did you think it was a learning opportunity? There's your answer.
Yep.
Now you know what your mindset is. Now, if you have a mindset of scarcity, it's not like you just go, "Whoa, well," like you're not Igor, right? Igor, the one who, "Oh, no, it happened once again." He is the most depressing person in my life when I was under the age of 7, right? He always saw the negativity in everything.
Yep.
Piglet too, by the way, while we're on the topic. Okay. I might be hitting infringement rights as far as I'm going into this. So that means we'll see if I'm here next week.
Right.
But but okay, here's their mindsets, right? But what did Pooh focus on? His goal of getting honey.
Mm-hmm.
He was a one-track mind, right? Of just getting to the honey, right? Well, could they have learned from Winnie the Pooh's actions and Tigger's actions? Maybe they could have picked it up, right? Not to say they had no flaws either, but their mindset was right. They had
Mm-hmm.
positive mindset, So my 7-year-old son's gonna love this part of the podcast, right? Because he was like, "Daddy, I listened, I learned some stuff, but you started getting into like Christopher Robbins
Hey, we're,
and Winnie
we
the
got we
Pooh."
got we got movie reviews on this one. We've got
Yes,
recommendations. We're gonna hit books next. No, hey,
there is a
that's
book,
where the
Abundance.
live that is.
The book Abundance is absolutely phenomenal. I got to see him speak at a conference, and
Mm-hmm.
there was maybe like 60 other financial advisors in the room. So I was very honored to even be in a room with this author. But then he starts walking through his mindset to write the book of abundance. And he said something that struck me. He was like, when you write about abundance, you really have to live it and breathe it. And the pressure to write a book about abundance is pretty high. And I was like, that's a really good point. In the back of my mind, I was like, if you were writing about scarcity, it could be like a one word on like a on the
Igor.
900-page doc of a book, right? Just one word, right? What's the word?
No, I said Igor, right? That's the one
Igor.
word.
Yeah, just Igor.
It's that
There's
your
your
word,
book
right?
on scarcity.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But
Or
yeah,
it could be failure,
yep,
right?
yep.
Take those failures and move it into learning
Well,
opportunities, as we do every single week to make this podcast better for
yeah.
our listeners.
Well, and
Andy,
I
take us
think,
home, buddy. Take
yeah,
us
no, I
home.
think you've summed it up really well, and you've summed this whole month up, right? This is January. It's in your control. This is the direct message to everybody that's out there listening, that's viewed us. Take it in your control right now to make a decision this year. Make 2025 your year to shift to an abundant mindset, or be more optimal in your abundant mindset. Understand how to set goals. We've built this fantastic training program that you can get at clearpicturefinancial.com. Go through the training yourself. See if it's a fit for you. But then if you need an accountability partner, whether that's our team that comes in that can help you, then that's where you can connect and engage. But this has been like the best kickoff, Jason. I'm so excited. This is our second and a half year. We did our first trial year, then we did a full last year. 24 is our first full year of 20 minutes of clarity. I know it's exciting. I think people are enjoying it. But let's make this the best year. Let's kick it off that way. Looking forward to next month series. I think we're talking about how do you incorporate love and money. That's a fun one, but we might give some gift ideas for those guys out there. Look for that gift idea. But anyway, great topic. I hope everybody goes to the website, downloads the white paper, and we can't wait to see you and let you listen. Tune in next week.